Someone close to you is going to die. Maybe they already have, and when that moment comes, or came, your first instinct was not to think. It was to do something, to arrange flowers, to call someone, to sit beside the body just a little while longer. You probably never asked why. You just did it. But the answer reaches back further than language, further than cities, further than anything you were taught. It reaches back to a moment in human history, so ancient it predates the very idea of history. Death is the one experience every human who has ever lived has had to face, not their own death, the death of someone else. And what your ancestors did with that experience shaped you in ways you cannot see. You are not the first person to stand beside a body and not know what to do. You are just the most recent. Go back roughly 300,000 years. Your ancestors are not yet fully modern humans. Their brains are slightly smaller. Their tools are crude. Their world is dangerous and immediate. And yet, in a cave system in South Africa called Rising Star, paleoanthropologists discovered something that changed everything. Deep inside a chamber nearly impossible to reach, accessible only through a narrow vertical shaft less than 8 inches wide, researchers found the bones of Homo naledi, a species older than us. Or a species we barely understand, and those bones were placed there, deliberately, intentionally, not scattered by predators, not tumbled by rivers. Placed. Lee Berger, the scientist who led the expedition, described it as one of the most shocking finds in the history of paleoanthropology, because what it implied was almost too large to process. It implied that something resembling burial, something resembling ritual, something resembling the impulse to do more than simply leave a body behind, predates modern human cognition by hundreds of thousands of years. Your instinct to not abandon the dead is older than your species. Now move forward in time. Not all the way to now, just to roughly 100,000 years ago. You are now among anatomically modern humans in what is present-day Israel, at a site called Kafse Cave. Here, archaeologists found something extraordinary. A child's skeleton, buried with a set of deer antlers laid deliberately across the child's arms. The antlers had been placed, not dropped. The position was intentional, not accidental. This is what researchers call an interment with grave goods. It means someone grieved. It means someone believed the object mattered beyond the moment of death. It means someone was trying to send the child somewhere with something to carry. You do that too. You place things in caskets. You leave objects on graves. Musas, you bring flowers that no one living will ever smell. And the impulse is identical. Only the objects have changed. But here's where it gets strange. The scientists who study these early burials, researchers like April Noel, who specializes in the cognitive evolution of early humans, argued that the act of burial is not primarily about the dead. It is about the living. Every ritual humans build around death is actually a structure built for the survivors. The grave goods, the flowers, the ceremony, the words spoken, the food prepared afterward. None of it helps the person who died. All of it helps the people left behind. Your brain needs a script. When someone dies, your mind enters a state of profound disorientation. The world you understood no longer makes the sense it did an hour ago. Ritual is what your brain reaches for when logic fails. It is not superstition. It is cognitive scaffolding. It is the oldest technology your species ever invented. Consider what anthropologist Barbara King documented across dozens of species in her research on animal grief. Elephants return to the bones of their dead. Chimpanzees carry deceased infants for days or weeks, sometimes longer. Crows gather around a dead crow in what researchers call a crow funeral, though they are likely doing something more practical, scanning for danger. But in all of these cases, the behavior is not random. There is a pause, there's attention, there's something that functions like acknowledgement. Your brain does not come from nowhere. It comes from a long line of brains that stopped when something died. Now think about what the very first human funerals might have looked like. Not caves, not graves, not anything that leaves a mark archaeologists can find. Probably nothing. Probably just gathering. Probably sitting near the body. Probably making sounds. Anthropologists believe that many of the earliest human death rituals left no physical trace at all because they were not material. They were behavioral. They were presence. They were the refusal to walk away. That refusal, that inability to simply move on, is one of the strangest things about your species. Almost no other animal stays near its dead without a specific adaptive reason, but you do. You sit in a room with a body for days. You hold services. You gather strangers who never met the deceased and ask them to come and stand in a room together and feel something. The evolutionary pressure for this behavior is not obvious. It does not help you find food. It does not help you outrun predators. So why does it persist? The answer, according to evolutionary psychologists like Jesse Baring, is terror management. Your brain, unlike nearly any other brain on Earth, can think about its own future death. It can model its own non-existence, and that ability, which is fantastically useful for planning and foresight, comes with a catastrophic side effect. Existential dread. The knowledge that you will die, if left unmanaged, would paralyze you completely. Ritual is what transforms that paralyzing knowledge into something survivable. It gives death a container. It gives grief a shape. It gives the unbearable a timeline. And so humans invented the afterlife. Not one afterlife. Hundreds of them, in virtually every culture ever recorded, across every continent, across every era of human history. The dead go somewhere. Sometimes up, sometimes down. Sometimes they become animals, or ancestors, or stars, or part of the soil. The specific destination changes, but the insistence that there is one never does. The Neanderthals, your ancient cousins who went extinct roughly 40,000 years ago, appear to have buried their dead with flowers. Pollen found at a site in Iraq called Shanader Cave suggested deliberate floral placement, though this finding has been debated. What is not debated is that they buried their dead at all. A species that buried its dead believed, or at least behaved as though it believed, that something about the person persisted beyond the body. You still believe this. Most people on Earth do, in one form or another. And even those who do not believe it in a religious sense still feel it. You still talk to the dead. You still address the deceased at funerals. You still say things like, "He would have loved this," or "She's watching." Your rational mind may reject the idea. Your nervous system does not. The neuroscience behind this is striking. Research from Yale's Mind and Development Lab, led by psychologist Paul Bloom, found that children as young as 3 intuitively assume that mental life continues after death. They have to be taught otherwise. The default setting of the human mind is to treat dead people as still existing somewhere, still thinking, still feeling. This is not a cultural artifact. It is a cognitive baseline. It is what your brain does when no one tells it what to believe. Death is cognitively impossible for the human mind to fully accept. Not emotionally, cognitively. Your brain literally cannot generate a first-person experience of non-existence. Every time you try to imagine being dead, you are there imagining it. The imaginer never disappears. So your brain, running out of options, defaults to the one conclusion it can actually simulate: continuation. Ancient humans did not invent the afterlife because they were naive. They invented it because their brains generated it automatically, the same way your brain generates it right now. So let's move forward again, to ancient Egypt, to Mesopotamia, to the burial mounds of Neolithic Europe, to the terracotta warriors standing silent underground in China. The scale changes, the sophistication changes, but the core impulse is identical to that Homo naledi skeleton carried deep into a cave in South Africa, by hands that were not quite human yet. Something about this person mattered enough to do more than leave them behind. Now come back to today, to the flowers you send, to the obituaries you read, to the way you slow down driving past a cemetery, to the way a deceased person's old voicemail message, if you still have it, can stop you completely. You are not weak for feeling these things. You're ancient. You are running the oldest software in the human operating system. The question anthropologists now argue about is not whether your ancestors grieved. That is settled. The question is what grief tells us about consciousness itself, because grief requires a model of other minds. It requires you to have understood deeply and personally that another mind existed beside your own. And now it does not. Grief is not just sadness, it is the cognitive shock of a mind-sized hole in the fabric of your world. Your ancestors felt that hole. They filled it with whatever they had. Antlers, flowers, fire, prayer, stone, song. You still feel it, and you still reach for something to fill it. Tonight, somewhere in the world, someone is sitting beside a body, not ready to leave. They do not know they are doing something 300,000 years old. They do not know that they are enacting the same refusal your earliest ancestors enacted in the dark of a cave, before language, before agriculture, before everything you think of as civilization. They just know they are not ready to go, and so they stay. That is what ancient humans did when someone died. They thought the same thing you do. The same thing you will always do. They stayed.